Well, we have been talking, but for the record, could you tell us what your full name is?
My full name is Minnie Pearl Howard.
All right. And Minnie, I know, could you tell us where you grew up and where you were born?
Sure. I was born about 3 miles east of Coffeyville, Mississippi, which is located in Yalobusha County. My father was a construction worker, so the first 5 years of my life were spent traveling. The family eventually settled in Grenada, and that's where I grew up. I attended high school there and graduated there. After graduation, I attended the University of Mississippi as an undergraduate, and I also attended the University of Mississippi Law School.
Okay. What is there anyone who you think really influenced you to go to University of Mississippi and then to law school? Anybody in particular?
Not really. When I grew up and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I thought it would be easier as an undergraduate if I went to the university as an undergraduate, since I planned to go to the law school. So I didn't have any particular person who encouraged me to go. In fact, just the opposite. They all encouraged me to go elsewhere. But I wanted that law degree, and I thought attending Ole Miss as an undergraduate would facilitate that.
So, you say you wanted to go to law school. Why is that?
I think it was twofold. One, I was told that I needed to be a teacher, which made me instantly want to do something else. And I think, and not because, I'm not disparaging teachers. I think teachers are great, but that was the profession that most people thought blacks should have when I was growing up and trying to choose a career. Another reason was the fact that I saw my mother, I thought, mistreated. And I thought that by being a lawyer, if I had been a lawyer or if I had had access to the legal system, I might have been able to help her. So those two things motivated me to see what I could do by going ahead and becoming a lawyer.
Do you want to share any of the particulars about how you thought you could have helped your mother?
My mother was uneducated. She had maybe a first grade education, and it is difficult maneuvering in a world where everyone has more education than you. If you are a single woman trying to rear a child and you are trying to do that with next to nothing, because you have to remember this was in the mid-60s. And so your income was extremely limited if you had no education. And people took advantage of that. She could not read. She could barely write her name. And so contracts, she didn't know what she was signing. People making demands of her to give them money, when in actuality they didn't have any right to money because she was not the party to the contract. It was her husband, but she was forced to give hard-earned money that she needed for shelter and food. And if there had been someone who could have pulled her aside and talked to her and told her what her rights were, it would have been easier in numerous occasions. But without that lawyer there, without someone who knew the legal system, she just fell through the cracks. I wanted to make a difference, if I could, to other people who might be in similar situations.
So did that motivation have anything to do with the track that you took with your legal career?
I think it did. Obviously, I chose to work here at North, and this is a poverty law agency. So, yes, I think it did. And I won't lie to you. There were other opportunities to go other places, but at the beginning of my career especially, I think it was a nice fit working at North and the views that I had of the world. It was a nice fit at that time.
Did anyone influence your coming here to North Mississippi Rural Legal Services?
I had heard about North. When I graduated, it was, I think, the place to be. It was considered a training ground for young lawyers, especially young black lawyers.
When was that?
I graduated in May of 1980. And so at that time, legal services was, as I said, considered a training ground for young black lawyers. There were not as many opportunities to go into the legal field in different areas as there are now. So it was good to go to legal services, to be around older lawyers who were doing significant litigation. You got to be around them as they developed their cases. You could go to court with them. You learned your craft, and many times after 2 or 3 years, you would then go into private practice with maybe another agency or even just private practice. But it was essential that you learn what to do. And so legal services, again, was a good fit for what I needed. Being a neophyte, that it was a good placement for me.
So, could you tell us a little about maybe the challenges of being with the program in the early years, or what it was like on a day-to-day basis?
It was bare-boned. Okay. The facilities, I had an office that was maybe 8 feet by 6. was enough room for a desk, a chair for me, a chair for my client. I don't even think I had room for a filing cabinet. It was very economical when it came to space. Going to court was interesting. Oftentimes, some of the judges thought that because I was a legal services attorney, that I could spend the day there, because the other attorneys were getting paid by the hour and their clients were paying them by the hour, and therefore me being a legal services attorney, whether I went first or not, didn't matter. I was going to get paid, and so I could stay later if necessary. I was an oddity because I was not only a black female, who was a lawyer. I was in a field where the majority of the attorneys were white males. Some of them were dismissive. They didn't pat me on the head. It wasn't as if they acknowledged me. I had to prove that I was worthy to play with the boys. Many times clients would tell me that I wasn't a real lawyer. I remember one lady, when I got her the relief she wanted, she told me that she couldn't have done better if she had gotten a real lawyer. So that stuck in my mind. As a legal services attorney, that was typical. You weren't considered the real deal, and so you had to assert yourself. You had to be good. You didn't have the luxury of making a lot of mistakes. You had to sort of hit the ground running. I was not I won't say I was mistreated, but I think many of the lawyers were indifferent. I think that's a good word. I think they were indifferent. I had to face even new lawyers came out thinking that their stuff didn't stink, and they had less experience than me, but it was because they were in private practice and I was a legal services attorney, and so obviously I could be bullied or I wasn't very good. So there were things that had to be overcome. That was one of the most difficult things, I think, at the beginning.
Yeah. So, do you feel you did overcome that?
I think I did. I think that I didn't, what Faulkner said, he thought man would not just persevere, that he would prevail. And I think I prevailed. I did my work. I kept my head down. I think I got a fairly good reputation, that I was someone who was not afraid to litigate. I would not necessarily settle to avoid litigation. I would work to try to get my clients what they wanted. I could be expected to give my all, and I think that was a pushback at the fact that I was a legal services attorney, and therefore I wouldn't try very hard because I had a paycheck coming in, win or lose. I know the judges. I don't say that we're bosom buddies, but I think that the judges respect me. I think that the lawyers that I deal with respect me. So yes, I think that I think I overcame the initial problems.
And didn't you serve as the president of the local bar association
Yes,
at some point?
yes. In Panola County, I was elected as the bar president. Yes.
And then now what you hold a position with the Bar Foundation?
Yeah. I'm one of the Mississippi Bar Commissioners.
Right.
Yes.
On the state level.
On the Mississippi Bar Association.
Right. Getting back to the situation involving you saw the legal news of people like your mother. Could you comment on whether you think North Mississippi Rural Legal Services was able to assist people like her?
I think they did. I think our director of litigation, Ruby White, calls legal services a full service law firm. And to me, that means that there's basically no jobs that are too small for us. Have an interest of working with people dealing with family law, or you have consumer matters, or housing issues, or youth court. It's wherever voting rights matters. There was school desegregation cases. Wherever there was a need, legal services, I think, tried to step in and do what it could. And so everyone didn't have the same level of need. I mean, some people had an administrative issue that had to be resolved. Some had an issue with not being able to vote, or to be to be free of domestic violence. I mean, everyone's has different needs, but I think the program tried to step in and to meet those needs, where, kind of met people where they were, trying to assess their needs and trying to do what it could. So yes, I think that if it had not been for legal services, many people would not have had any legal assistance in the 60s or 70s, or even now for that matter.
Yeah. So you and I have seen a lot of changes in the program through the years. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I have a much bigger office now, but I think that the cases that were being handled when I initially came on board, I mean, big cases, significant cases had been filed, and the program was in the process of litigating, like the Ayers case. We initially had been able to do desegregation cases, which can't do anymore. Class action lawsuits, which we can't do anymore. We are still trying to deal with problems, but we can't do it on the grand scale that we used to do. we have to be more focused. I think is a way to say it. Whether there's a housing issue, you're trying to do foreclosure preventions, or you're looking at domestic violence and you're trying to make a difference in those situations. The problem is that you're still looking at big issues, but you don't have the resources that you had initially. So you're trying to produce significant results with insignificant resources to a degree, or much diminished resources. The issues are still important. The problems are still there. You just don't have the resources. And when I say resources, I'm talking primarily about funding, because with funding you get to hire people, and our staff has diminished considerably, and we've had to close offices. So that has impacted on what we can do.
Right. And these changes have come about because of the restrictions from the federal government?
It's a combination of restrictions from federal restrictions that says no class actions, no school desegregation cases. You can't do that anymore. You can't do class action lawsuits, and that's coupled with Congress trying to Congress saying you're not going to get as much money because it's based on your poverty population, and the population still has problems, it still has needs, but we're just not getting the money that would make it easier for us.
At the same time, this program has been in existence for in excess of 50 years.
Right.
And been in for the long haul. So is there still, do you feel a significant role for the program in this part of the state?
I think so. One of the things that is amazing is that we have been around for more than 50 years. And some people remember the litigation from the 70s, and they are surprised to hear that we would be willing to assist them with stopping a termination of parental rights, or that we might be willing to do to represent them in order to keep them from being evicted. Some people see us as that law firm that only does the big things, but everything is important. If you have a child who is about to lose disability benefits, that's just as important to you as someone who is concerned about not being allowed to vote or not being allowed to run for office. If you are looking at someone who is in a domestic violence situation, that is just as important as someone who's concerned about not getting equal resources in a school. So it changes. The needs. As I say, not the big glamour lawsuits, but certainly relevant lawsuits and important lawsuits for the people who are involved in them.
What do you think that are some of the most important cases you've been involved in, or in, projects or cases, I guess you would put it?
I think that probably one of the things I'm most proud of is a case that came out of the Mississippi Supreme Court that I had appealed that basically helped establish guidelines and rules for how guardian ad litems would represent their clients. I think that the court came and gave some rules, very concrete rules, and said this is what is required to be done. And so I was proud to have been involved in that. There are other cases that you have from Panola County, voting rights cases where Leonard McClellan was lead counsel, talking about problems in that county and got them resolved and ended up with the first black superintendent, I guess it's Reconstruction or something. That was important. And it was again, it was a learning experience because you got to see the attorneys, the senior attorneys. You got to see them in action. So it was exciting to bring about a change, but it was also exciting to be there and so to learn from them as they, develop their cases.
Well, could you describe the connection between the Legal Services Office and the community? Was that a good connection, a good help for the program in terms of focus and direction?
I think the community thought of us as a resource. The secretaries there could be counted upon to fill out papers for them when they were trying to do applications, whether they were trying to get birth certificates or work applications, whatever they were there. The paralegals could be trusted to, the people would come in and they would have a complaint, and the paralegals would get on the phone and make a phone call to the sheriff's department. If a person came in and said, I can't talk to my child, something is going on, I don't know what it is, and you come in and talk to a lawyer, or you talk to a paralegal who would then call the chief deputy and say, hey, what's up? And because they knew that your agency, I won't say was crazy, but they might do something, out of the box, they would work it out because they didn't want you to file any lawsuits against them. So I think that they felt, when I say they, I mean the community, I think, felt that we were a resource and that we could be trusted, and that if they had a problem and they came to us, everything was not about filing a lawsuit. It wasn't. Sometimes it was a brief service, sometimes it was a phone call, but they felt that we were someone that they could come to, that they could trust, and that if it were possible, we were going to get the job done for them.
Was that unusual in the early years that people in the black community would have a government-funded office that was sort of friendly to helping them in those kind of ways?
I don't think it was. I think that if you were a black person or a person of color in the 60s or 70s, when you walked into an office, a government office, many times I think you felt uncomfortable. First of all, because it was seldom that you were going to see a face of color behind the desk. People were abrupt. They were rude. They were disinclined to give you assistance. Even to the point, I think, sometimes of pretending they did not understand what you want. And so you would go away and leave them alone. So you needed someone who was a little bit crazy, who didn't mind ruffling feathers, that would come in and basically stand up and demand that you get some attention. And you could do that by coming to legal services. If you may not always get a remedy, but your chances of getting a remedy, and a favorable remedy, increased if you went to legal services and talked to them.
Do you think that was one of the positive effects of legal services coming to this area?
I think absolutely. I think that agencies had to realize that it's not going to be the same old thing, that there is going to be some kind of accountability, that we are going to have to be a little more even-handed in how we handle cases, that you are not going to just be able to ignore certain people in the community because they are uneducated, because they don't have access to a lawyer, because now they do. And you have crazy people out there that are not afraid to file lawsuits and make you take notice of them, and make you, be fairer about your process. And I think that was important. I think it made a difference. And as time went on, I think that the people at legal services who were jumping up and down, and the people at the agencies, started respecting each other, started trusting each other to a degree. And so if, as I said, if the agency received a call, or that something is not going right, and someone on your payroll is acting inappropriately, they wouldn't just ignore it. They would say, well, we'll see about that, or we'll make a call and see if we can't, resolve this. Because it became more of a working relationship, as being so adversarial. But that took some time. It wasn't something that happened overnight. But again, legal services didn't go away, and so you had to kind of come to terms with them.
I can remember when we were in the Batesville office that the superintendent of schools would occasionally call you to get your guidance on things, and the sheriff and others.
Right.
That was in the mid-'80s, right?
Right.
So time had passed.
Right.
And you had built those bridges, right?
Right. That's true. And like I said, it wasn't something that happened. And it wasn't just me. I think it was just the legal services program, came in very hard and ruffled feathers and knocked people down, knocked institutions down, but then were able to come back and then build some bridges that we had knocked down, or at least rattled some.
Just, I think it might be important to kind of show the context. When did you graduate from high school?
Boy, you're getting personal.
Well, I have a point here.
Okay. I graduated in May of 1972.
Okay. And so, do you mind, would you mind telling us the circumstances under which you went through the graduation, and then to show what you just said about how things went forward?
Okay.
Not a huge length of time if you look at history.
Okay. Oh, when I graduated in 72, I was the valedictorian of my class. The school had only been integrated or desegregated for about 18 months. There was a lot of anger in the white community because I graduated from Grenada High School in Grenada County, and there was a lot of anger over that. And when graduation night comes, everyone is going to have a good time. You're going to graduate. You're going to be very happy. You're going into a new chapter of your life. I had to give the speech as a valedictorian. I had to have a police escort to graduation. The police came, and when I say escort, I rode in a police car. And they waited there until the ceremony was over, and when it finished, they put me back in the car and they drove me home, and basically suggested that I might want to stay at home and not go out because they had some fear for my safety. That's what I assumed when they basically encouraged me to stay in. I think they had some fear for my safety, and that was in 72. So.
Do you think that your work at Legal Services might have made some of the change that changed the landscape from that to what we have now?
I'd like to think it did. I'd like to think that when the people met Minnie Howard, the lawyer, that she was intelligent, hardworking. She was a good representative of the legal profession. She tried to do the right thing, and you must appreciate that it's not just people of color who are represented by legal services. We represent everyone, and so the same kind of legal assistance that people of color receive, whites received also. So I think that had something to do. We did not pick and choose. If you had an issue, regardless of your color, regardless of your ethnicity, we were going to try to get you a result that you wanted. And I think when people saw that it wasn't just people of color who were being assisted, I think that helped us also, because we tried to be even-handed. It was about helping people and making a difference regardless of who you were. So
have you ever thought about what the landscape of North Mississippi would be like if there had not been a North Mississippi Rural Legal Services? I know it's a speculation, but
well, I think if you simply look at the state legislature, that would be different. Where would you wouldn't have probably as many people of color. You might not have any. You have a congressman, Benny Thompson, who was a named plaintiff in the Ayers case. And so if Ayers had never occurred, would he be Congressman Benny Thompson? You look at the fact that you have district attorneys, you have black judges and chancellors and people, justices on the Mississippi Supreme Court. Many of those people are individuals who got their training, their first jobs were at legal services. They had the opportunity to learn their craft and to hone their craft. The lawsuits that the legal services program filed for school desegregation cases, all of these changes in many ways are here because of litigation that legal services did. Disability cases, people that had no idea how to get benefits or how to keep benefits. All of this, you have to remember at one time, many in the private bar did not handle Social Security disability cases for whatever reasons. But you had legal services, paralegals and attorneys stepped in and started processing those cases. So I think that many of the changes legal services helped facilitate. We didn't do them alone by any means. I wouldn't be arrogant and say that, but I'd like to think that we did have a part in making those changes and keeping those changes, not losing the progress that we've made, because we still are a force, maybe a smaller force, maybe a more elite force, but we're still a force.
You made me think of the fact that when I started practicing law, there were no black people working in any courthouse in Lafayette County except, I think, Leroy Waddingham at the federal courthouse as assistant clerk. Nobody in the sheriff, police department, no secretaries in lawyers' offices, no black lawyers, no black bank clerks, nobody working in stores downtown who were black. Is that the way it was in your town as well?
Yes.
And so you described quite a change.
Oh, absolutely. You go into a clerk's office in Grenada or Panola County or here, and you're going to see black faces who are deputy clerks and maybe even the clerks. You'll have justice court judges who are black, deputy clerks. I mean, all across the board. And when you go into a courtroom, you're going to see black lawyers, not just one. For many years, I was the only one. But now, I mean, you have, black lawyers dotting the courtroom. You have judges, whether they are youth court judges or they're circuit court judges or chancellors. All of this is different, and I think many of those lawyers started off at legal services. They got their training at legal services. And so to see them train, to get experience and then to be inspired to go on and to serve in another capacity is great. And we're talking about magistrates and administrative law judges. I mean, this is totally different from the way it was when I initially came to work at legal services.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about your work here before we conclude?
I think it remains a challenge to continue the work, considering some of the limitations that we have, but I still think it's worthwhile. And I would just encourage people who are interested in making a change that legal services is still here, and come join us.